Hey everyone, it's time for a video. Some time ago I had a tool haul for Mr. Worker, and this is one of the items. It is a socket set from Stahlwille. So we're going to cover it real quick, go through a few things about it, and do maybe a little comparison to some Craftsman sockets, and maybe a Kobalt impact, just to provide some comparison to other things. Anyway, so this is, let's see, Stahlwille SKU number is 96838112. I think the product number is ES52/17, which means that this is, the ES is a tray. I'll be honest with you, I don't know what the ES stands for. I know S is, I think, system, I don't know what the E is for. Basically, anything with the ES and Stahlwille stuff is going to be a plastic tray like this. In this case, this is a 1/3, one of their 1/3 trays. Now, Stahlwille is very consistent in their system. If you've heard some of my other videos, I've talked about this before. They have these tool inlays, and as I said before, all the German tool manufacturers, the big ones like Gedore, Hotzit, and Stahlwille, all have this. They all usually have some form of system, though it varies into how consistent they are. Stahlwille is very consistent. Theirs are their 1/3 module, for example, which is basically this, is 175 millimeters across by 350 millimeters deep. In other words, 1 to 2. And then they have a 2/3, which would be 350 by 350, and then a 3/3, which is, I think it's 535, 540 by 350 deep. They also have a 1/6, which is roughly this size. It's be 1/2 of a 1/3. Everything they provide is going to be in one of those increments. And then their drawers for their tool trolleys are either full size, meaning they do 3/3, in other words, 3 1/3 modules, or some combination thereof. And then they have their big one, which has 2, it's basically, you can stack 6 1/3 modules. It would be, I guess, 6/3, and they make it so that it's deeper, and as well as being longer. Hotzit's a little, they're pretty consistent, that they have a little more variance in what they offer. Their sizes are actually pretty similar to Stahlwille's in terms of what they have. I think they're like 172 by 344, so they're close. Though I've seen some that are like 342 deep. But then they also have what they call a 1/3 plus, and so on. And then Gedore is kind of all over the map, honestly. I tried to figure out some consistency of theirs, and they have variations and whatnot. Anyway, so this is Stahlwille's 1/3. That's kind of a apology for the digression, but this is going to come back in a later video. Trust me, it's coming. So this is that. This is the plastic tray. They have their foam tray, which they call their TCS, which is tool control system, and or TCS inlay. This is an ES inlay, and the part number, as I said before, was ES5217. So ES means it's in a tray. 52 is the series, in this case the series of socket. This is the 52 series socket, which is 1/2 inch drive, 6 point, and then the last thing is 17, means it has 17 parts, which is 5, 10, and 7 makes 17. So that's that part. Let's see. Let's go ahead and cut it open. Now, I will say, this is their packaging, and quite frankly, even with it cut open like this, pretty solid. Works pretty well. This is how I got it, and I like it. It's very simple, which, compared to, say, Hotzit, which is, they have a very nice aesthetic, as I've said before. And of course, Vera, who really, they really get out there and do some excellent stuff. This is kind of a, I guess you can say, minimalist departure in terms of packaging. That said, I like it a lot. And honestly, I like all three. Vera's packaging is really nice. Hotzit has its own aesthetic. And then I also like Stahlwille. In some ways, they're very straightforward and plain. You know what you're getting. They're not going to mess around, and their thing, they're just, hey, this is it. Here's our tools, and that's how it works. So this set is, as I said before, it's the it's metric half-inch drive, and or 12.5 millimeter. This tray is ABS. I don't know if that means it's recyclable or recycled. Sorry, you can't see that, but that's what it means. So the tray itself, you know, pretty durable. It's pretty solid plastic, and then your sockets all are, you know, they all fit pretty well. This is not foam, so there's going to be some, I guess, looseness or whatnot. The set itself ranges from 10 millimeter all the way up to 32 millimeters. And they don't do any skipping until you get to about, I think it's 22. Yeah, so you get a 22, and then it jumps to 24. And then you get 27, 30, and 32. So you don't have a 23 in the others. Now, I do understand why they do that. It's because most people mostly don't use that. Those aren't sizes you really run into that much, and I can kind of grasp why they do that. Now, that said, there is an argument for having those intermediate sizes in between these, simply because you know, if you work on a car or some other piece of equipment that has you know, rusty fasteners, the precision of, say, you know, a 22 would not be, you know, it might be rusty, so it might not fit quite right, which means you might want a 23 so you can get it on there and get it off. I haven't run into that, but there are plenty of people who do, so it's just something to keep in mind that up until the 20s, you're going to get all the intermediate sizes, but then you kind of get some skipping. So just something to factor in if you're thinking about getting this set. I've never had any Stahlwille socks before, and they are very expensive, but I think realistically speaking, these aren't that bad considering what you get. I mean, you get the tray, and I got a really good price. Again, it's a Mr. Worker price. It's overseas. You know, I know there's some concern about whether or not, you know, when you get it, but I've never had any trouble getting anything from them, and everything I've ordered has come in pretty well. They've done good for me, and I've got some good discounts and some good stuff. So I've just had good success. I have had issues with other sellers, none of the ones that most people have, like hand tools from Germany, or I think it's Jin Putzier. Don't know if that's the correct pronunciation. I bought stuff from them as well, and I've had no problems at all. The only place I've ever had any issue is Amazon Germany, and I covered that in a different video. So I have to say I won't be doing that again. Anyway, so let's go into them. In general, I mean, they're pretty nice, really. The only thing I can say, and I already kind of knew this from some of the other stuff, I've had this complaint before about Stahlwille stuff, is they have marking issues. And I don't mean marking issues from a quality, I mean in terms of size. So let me zoom down and then try to focus in. Yeah. So this is a 10 millimeter, and that's the 10. And it's really, really hard to see. I mean, it's tiny. Now, in practice, once you learn, you don't really care, I know, but the reality is it still does kind of matter if something's jumbled up, or, as often is the case, if you're asking someone else to hand you something, it's better if the markings are easy to read. Because if I'm going, I've got a helper, and I say, bring me a 10 millimeter socket, they're going to have to go and dig around and find this. And eventually they might catch it too if they're helping you a lot, but in some cases it's still kind of a drag. I just like better writing. It's just the way I am. I mean, yeah, I know that eventually you'll figure it out, but still it's kind of nice to have. Now, that's the downside to Stahlwille. I've seen it on this. I've seen it on, trying to recall, there's another tool I've got from them that the markings were just small. Oh, I know. It's something I haven't done a video on yet. When I come back to those, you'll see the same problem. You know, and it's kind of a comparison to say if you look at their wrenches. The wrenches have really good, nice visibility in their, you know, visible markings, makes it real easy to see the size. But the socket, just not so much. That said, their markings themselves are really good. You know, it's excellent, very crisp and sharp. You know, here's the series, which is 52, Germany. They have, of course, the chrome alloy, Stahlwille, and so forth. So, all in all, I mean, like I said, really nice. And it's a beautiful socket. This is really finished well. I can't find any imperfections on it that, you know, anything that would really matter. Let's see. Now, I did find it kind of interesting that they went down to a 10 on a 1/2 inch drive, because this is a pretty small size, to be honest. I wouldn't imagine a 10 also would need a 1/2 inch drive wrench, but you got it. Okay, it's there. And let's see, of course they have their knurling, which is on the bottom like most people do. And their knurling is pretty good. It's pretty solid in terms of what you're getting. I can feel it. There's some grip there. If I need to go and, you know, turn something with my hand manually, this will really help. So that's that part. You know, and so on. The rest of them are this way. You've got your 11, 12, you know, all the way up. If you take one of the bigger ones, like this is the 24, you know, you can start seeing where it shifts from being a single. Let's see, we're going to be at about, yeah, it's getting close to about right here. You're starting to lose the shoulder and it's becoming a single turned piece. Looks like the 16 is where that hits. They have a nice big open hole. I don't know if that really means anything from a plus or minus. And it is kind of interesting though that like the bigger sockets, they switch to kind of a square, as you can see. Let me pause and change batteries. Thinking about this for a second, this is kind of a, I made a comment before they switched to a round to the square, but that's honestly kind of a silly comment because it's always going to be square here. I think what's kind of surprising is that, well, not really surprising, it just gets so big that it switches from a circular brooch. Well, the inside brooch is circular, while here it's so big you can just see the brooch for the drive itself. Anyway, just kind of a oddball observation by me, I guess. Let's see, let's do some measuring. And I do have, actually, I want to grab a socket that's consistent. One moment. All right, so I pulled a 22. I'm going to push these aside. And what we're going to do is we're going to compare this 22 from Stahlwille to this Craftsman. This isn't quite an apples to apples comparison because this is a 12 point and this is a 6 point. This is an older Craftsman made in the USA. They don't make these anymore. And I've got a Kobalt Impact. Again, not quite an apples to apples comparison because it's an Impact. And there's some differences here. The Kobalt and the Craftsman are the same height, while the Stahlwille is a little higher. I think, I don't know, maybe a 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters taller. Just guessing. There's some obvious differences immediately. The Craftsman is thinner, which, and some of that's going to be based on the fact that it's a 12 point. If we go and actually look at the size, outer size, 29.74. I would expect the Impact to be a lot bigger, and it's 31. You know, it's going to be thicker. And then the Stahlwille. So this is kind of a similar comparison with the Craftsman, 29.7. Just a smidge thicker than this. Not a lot, but some. And then, you know, one of the big differences, of course, is you got this step here on the Stahlwille. And then you have the almost anemic knurling on the Craftsman. I mean, it's there. You can feel it, but I'm sure it provides a little bit. But this is, you know, significantly more, honestly. And then there's nothing here on the Impact, the Kobalt. So let's see if we measure the thickness, and this is to get it pretty close, or maybe just a better comparison. The thickest part, 5.43 millimeters for the Kobalt, while the Stahlwille is 3.7. That's to be expected, though. Again, the Impact is just a bigger, thicker, beefier thing. It's what it's supposed to be. You can't really compare here because this is 12 point, so it's not really going to work, but I'll try to kind of simulate it a bit. And I get 3.44 at its thickest. So it's not that much thinner, but again, you have kind of a comparison of this is just a meatier socket because it's a 6-point and this is a 12-point, so that's part of it. Of course, you have your obvious difference in the finish. The Craftsman is the kind of mirror polish that most Americans have. You know, American style sockets people prefer, while the Stahlwille is kind of more of the matte. Now that said, this is still, I'd say this is kind of shiny. They did some really nice machining on it. But, you know, it's kind of got that, compared to this especially, it's kind of got that Stahlwille matte finish. Let's see, of course, this is black like you would expect. Now, let's pull and compare a couple others. This is a Craftsman 25, which I actually don't have. Remember, this set does not have a 25. It jumps from 22 to 24 to 27, so this actually isn't a straight comparison. But, you know, you're not really going to see any difference, honestly, between the rest. That's just the way they're going to be. Then you've got a 30 here. This is a Craftsman 30. And this one is one of the made in China ones, more recent. You know, it is what it is. Height-wise, Stahlwille is just a smidge higher, maybe 1, maybe even 2 millimeters. Thickness-wise, again, this isn't a straight comparison, about 4.4. Stahlwille is 4.8, so it's got some meat there. And then, of course, you've got the shoulder, while the Craftsman is just a straight slug. I'm not sure if there's anything else to discuss on that aspect. Oh, one other thing that's important is that the Stahlwille, these sockets are their AS drive, which I think it's anti-slip is what they define that as. It's similar to the traction point profile of Hotset, or, you know, the more well-known Snap-on flank drive. It's that same kind of, you know, the corner is kind of cut in a bit so that it's trying to put more pressure or more force from the socket onto the nut or bolt face here, as opposed to putting it in the corners. You know, the other manufacturers, this has been around some time now. You can even see it here on this Kobalt, where they've got kind of that same kind of cutout. I don't know if you can see that too well, but let me see if I can get something to point with. Yeah, this will work. It's kind of, you know, kind of cuts in, and then it's kind of got it like a dome, and then the same thing here as well. Now that's, like I said, it's become a pretty common feature all over. Even the Craftsmans have it to an extent, though it's very hard to tell with these 12 points. Let's see. Oh, okay, we will compare some weight between the Craftsman and the Stahlwille. This would be a pretty good comparison, honestly. So let's take the 22, and we're going to weigh it. This is in grams. Stahlwille 22, 50.6 grams. Or 50.2 roughly, while the Craftsman 22 is, here, let me re-zero that out. That's not right. Make sure we're getting it right here. Let me, oh, I see the problem. Silly me, that's the cover on. Try it again. Okay, Stahlwille is 106 grams. Yeah, that makes a big difference. And the Craftsman is 105. So weight-wise, they're pretty much about the same. We'll compare the Craftsman. I think this actually will weigh a lot more. It's the Craftsman made in China one, 215.8. That's the 30 millimeter. Stahlwille is 181. Significantly lighter, probably because of this cutout mostly, I'd say. Alright, I think that's about it for the comparisons. It's probably also about all we can really say about it. And I'm pretty pleased I picked these up. Pretty good deal. I'll put a link in the description so you can try to find them. So that's about it, really. There's not really much else to cover. After all, they're just sockets. But they're nice sockets, and it's one of the things where, you know, you don't... And for me, I didn't, again, it is one of those things where I use that much before, and then over time, especially if you start doing more car work, where like suspension work, these things come in really handy. And I'm found that I need them more than I would expect. I usually try to use the impacts, but you end up with situations where impacts they're fine, but these are impacts. They're meant for a certain thing. Unless you're willing to pay a lot of money to get the snap-on kind of hybrid ones, which you can use in an impact wrench as well as, you know, regular. I think they're called their thin walls, but I could be wrong on that, and someone can correct me or provide information if they want. That's, you know, you're going to have kind of this split between impacts and regular sockets, just because there's benefits of having these just based on the size and how they work. Anyway, that's about it for this video. There's not really much else to discuss about them. Again, the sockets, but this is a pretty good set. We'll see how this works out for me. If anything's really odd about them or anything I don't like or like about them, I'll certainly have a follow-up about it down the road when I've used them a bunch. Anyway, I hope you like this, and if you want, you subscribe and leave a comment. And as always, thanks for watching. That's some bonus footage. I was looking at a couple things, noticed a couple things, and I wanted to bring them up. One thing I noticed, which is kind of interesting, so here's a Craftsman 22, and then here's a Stahlwille 22. So the first thing to note, which is kind of interesting, I'm going to zoom down so you can see this. I'll see if I can get it to focus too here. Notice on the Craftsman how the writing is. The writing is, here's the drive, right? And then here's fastener end. And then notice that the writing is aligned with the drive, right? So like you look at from the drive and there it is. The Stahlwille, on the other hand, is the reverse. Here is drive side, fastener side, and it's the other way. In other words, it's like this. So I kind of wonder why they decided to do that differently. It's just something kind of unusual. My guess would be that, let's say you have it in the tray, and you pull this out, you know, look at it that way, I'm assuming, because if you do it the other way, and this doesn't quite fit, you have to flip it over and turn it that way. I don't really notice a practical difference between the two, but I did find that kind of interesting that they had that. The other thing, I didn't mention this earlier, so this is the tray. I'm going to zoom back out. We got our tray, right? And I'll be honest with you, I'm not really a fan of trays. They're fine. Don't misunderstand. This is fine, and I'm happy that it comes with it, because usually you don't get anything like the Craftsman. I didn't get anything with it. It just was jumbled in a bag. This, on the other hand, it's nice that you get it. I like the modules and all that. This is not what the complaint is. The complaint is the foam is so much better. It's just, that's the way it is. I think even the Lone Star Mopar's guy made a comment in one of his recent videos where he said, if you can get a foam tray, get it, because they're great. Some people may disagree because they prefer other types of storage, but if I'm going to choose between a foam tray or a plastic tray like this, I would rather have the foam tray. If I could have this in foam, it would be better. Now, I have one other complaint. I'm kind of perplexed that they would waste this much space. Maybe not, though. I don't know. For me, and this is just for me, for other people may have a completely different use case, so for them this works great. This is just dead space. I'm not really going to put anything in this and just leave it floating around. I mean, I guess I could, but usually if I'm going to have fasteners or something that I'm going to just drop in a tray, I've got a magnetic tray or, you know, something like that. I'm not going to put it in with this. Now, again, that's me. So that's just my 2 cents on that. Just for what works for me, this is kind of like, I would rather this just be a single 1/6 tray, and then I can put something else in here like other stuff. One other thing, the tray's okay, but these are kind of brittle. They can break. They're durable, sure, but these things get crushed or cracked pretty well. I have noticed too that these are not a complete tight fit. They can slide around. I don't know how much difference it'll make in practice, but it's just something to note. Now, what I may do when I get around to, I've got a big project in planning stages still. I may end up making a foam tray and use these holes as kind of a template, you know, for not having to measure, I can just simply go and say, hey, what fits in there? Oh, that, okay, that's how I do it, and so forth. Not sure yet. The other thought was putting foam in the bottom and then cutting it. I don't know yet. Just something I'm thinking about. Anyway, that's just all I really noticed. That it was just a couple, just a few things that are few additional points. The writing one is kind of fascinating to me. That they have a different approach in the writing. And I found that fascinating. Anyway, thanks for watching.